Thank you so much, Libo, and thanks everybody for being here. So my name is Puleng, as Libo has said. I'm also alumnus of UCT. Not just as a student, I was a student in the MBA program and also in the PhD program, but also I worked for UCT for 10 years, from 2005 to 2015. And I continue to work with UCT. I now work as an adjunct faculty at the Graduate School of Business. So I do a lot of in executive education with UCT. And I continue to engage with the alumni office to create events like this. And it's such a privilege today to host a really special one about women and leadership. And also very glad to have a wonderful mix in our midst. I see a lot of young people. I see older generation. I see intergenerations right here in the audience, which is beautiful because that's the conversation we must have. And I also see a representation of both genders, which is brilliant. And in our midst, we have truly amazing panelists that we're here to hear from. So I'm just really a curious person here who is hopefully going to draw out as many questions as I can to draw out the wisdom and the insight from them. They said to me, we're not the wisest people in the room. We do have some stories and pearls of wisdoms to share, but we would also really love to hear from everybody and from their stories. So Liba said to me, make it as interactive and as engaging as you can, which is my specialty, by the way. I create engaged experiences in my companies. I love experiential, engaging conversations. So please come into the conversation and share your story too. Another thing that I requested from my panelists today is, can we go a little deeper? Can we go there to those places that we don't often go to when we talk about women leadership? Can we be a little bit vulnerable and just open up and be real as well? So I'm going to very kindly ask you to limit any kind of recording, be fully present with the conversation, and also just protect and honor their stories because they're willing. The depth that we'll take away from here and comes from their vulnerability and the realness of their story. And you have read their bios. Libo has mentioned a few things about them. What I really am interested in today, beautiful ladies, is your stories that have brought you to where you are. So, what are the milestones, the key things that have brought you to the place that you were at? We, the younger generation, we look at you and we see you on top of a mountain, and we admire you very deeply, and we are wondering, how did she make it? How did she even do it? I'm finding it very hard. It's blurry. It's difficult. There are choices that shouldn't be choices to be made in life. How did she get there? And then also being some of you a family member, some of you are grandparents. Can you believe that? Who do you think is a grandparent? I'm not
dear, no,
don't
please,
you
no.
answer. How did they even make it here? So we want to hear just your real stories around this. Who would like to go first? I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Who would like to just share your journey that got you here? Some key milestones that got you here.
Okay, the hostess seems to think I should.
The host goes last.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really so delighted to be here tonight and welcome. You all look very beautiful. I was saying to my friend Vanya here that actually when I think of UCT alumni, I always think about us. Why are there so many young people? Like, when did they go to UCT? My name is Itumeleng Dlamini. And as Libo has said, I work for the African Union. I'm an advisor to a CEO of one of their organs that's called the African Peer Review Mechanism. We're based here in Johannesburg. But more importantly, I'm a mother to three wonderful children. My eldest was actually at UCT last year. Sadly, she felt like, Mom, not for me. And then I have a boy and another little girl. In terms of my career, I always say I have a multidisciplinary experience in career because so many things have interested me and so many things I've been drawn to so much. And I decided very early on in my life that I would explore as much as I could. So I am a trained lawyer. I'm a lawyer by profession. I used to work at Bowman's. I was a partner. And during the course of working as a lawyer, and I became a partner quite young. I mean, obviously, I was single. I was, living the Joburg life, working really, really hard. So partnership came for me when I was 30, when generally I think most people will get to that point towards their late 30s. But the point of change for me, and I said I always consider myself as very multidisciplinary, was I felt I was a corporate lawyer working mergers and acquisitions, so you'd work late hours because some of your clients were either in Australia or the following month they're in London. But I didn't have a sense of fulfillment about what I was doing. I think technically I knew what I was doing, and I think the law firm appreciated it, which is why I became a partner. But I looked at myself and I said, what am I doing? Why am I not fulfilled? Why do I still is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 30 years of my life? And definitely the answer was no. And I took leave of absence. I asked to go away for 6 months. I didn't resign because I was going through a phase where I was like, everyone seemed to think you've done it. You're a partner at this international firm. And inside I was feeling, I don't feel it. Something's missing. So I took 6 months off, sabbatical. And during that period, I made a decision about myself and my career going forward, that I was going to do something that I could feel and see the impact on the ground. And that when I get into a job or a space, if I don't feel the connection between what I'm doing when I wake up in the morning and how that's impacting real people on the ground, then that stuff is not for me. So that helped define my way forward. It became my mission. Since then, I've done a few other things. I worked for the 2010 World Cup. And when I got into the 2010 World Cup, my objective was I want to be in a platform that promotes South Africa externally. Promote South Africa as a tourism destination, as an investment destination, and so on. And luckily, within the World Cup, the job that I did was head of international relations, and that's what I did. So if you asked me today, how were the stadiums built I have no idea. I mean, I do, but my focus was really going out there. And then 2010 ended. And for the first time in my life, I really didn't know what I was going to do. Because every job that I'd had, I make a decision, that's what I want, and I go and find it. And for the first time, I said, actually, let me just apply. Because even with 2010, I met at the airport Dr. Denny Odan, who had obviously won us this World Cup. He was on TV every day, and I was like, I've got to speak to this man. When am I going to meet him again? It's now or never. I only meet this man in my lounge on TV. And I went up to him and I said, hi, I'm Dumi. I really love what you've done. Congratulations, we're hosting the World Cup. I'd love to work with you. I'm a lawyer. can I work with you? And he gave me his office number. I said, come. And 2 weeks later, I had a job. And there were 6 of us. So that's how I'd always, approached finding a job. And suddenly I didn't have a job. And I thought, where to now? And I said, okay, let me allow the universe to guide me. Let me not choose. And the universe did guide me. I ended up being a CEO of an construction industry association called Master Builders, which was a fantastic experience. And that's why I first met what I would consider my failure in life. But anyways, fast forward, because I think some of that will come through the conversation. Where I am now is I work for the African Union. I advise them on corporate governance. Because I was a lawyer once, a job that I absolutely felt I will never go back to. But without that job, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, which I love so much. So yeah, that's who I am. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Test.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Oh.
You will probably have guessed who is a grandmother. 7 grandchildren.
Wow.
Is there anyone here who has been a cattle header?
Okay.
That's who I am. Someone asked me when I was an executive at some company, why are you so comfortable with men? Why are you not intimidated by men? And why do you challenge them in the boardroom? And I didn't have an answer at the time until I really had to dig deeper and ask myself, why do I see things the way that I see them, my perspective? Why do I make the decisions that I make? And why do I get so uncomfortable with things that people are comfortable with? And I realized, wow, this comes from the rural upbringing and my childhood experience. You see, one of the things that we should do is to remember where we come from. Because when we tell our stories, we talk about who we are, that actually informs the diversity of people, the different truths. If we are 8 billion in this world, we will have 8 billion truths. And for me, this is exactly why I espouse the leadership style that I have from that childhood experience. I didn't know that I was poor at the time because at a very young age as a cattle header, my parents were living but were not there. You will know if you're 59 years old that at the time, my age mates, I don't even think there's somebody who's as old as me here. But my father was in Stilfontein as a migrant laborer, and my mother obviously had to follow her. So I was the pillar of that small household. And being the firstborn daughter, I had to look after my father's household. Unfortunately, 3 of my youngest brothers died at infancy. So I was raised a boy. That's what influenced even the decisions that I made later. Because I was surrounded by boys who were very protective. I was a little bit clevernyana, that little bit clevernyana. So I had something to offer. If they want me to do this, I will do this provided you help me to dip the kettle. So I had an advantage. I had power at the time given by a rural community. Yet I was also embraced by the rural community. So if we go to a school trip, everybody, including teachers, knew High Shems as that orphan woman, little lady that's there. So they would actually put things together. For me, ukuthi ndingohlukani nabanye abantu, I mustn't look stand out, because I don't have biscuits or whatever. That's what informs the who I am. I am very, very curious about African leadership because I think what we do is that when we get into the scholarly work, we don't transform scholarship. Sure. And we also, what we do, we are very excited to go with the popular narrative and never question why things are done the way they are done. Sure. So when I got into the executive position, I asked those questions. Why do we do the things the way that we do? Why do you think you will have known now that I grew up in the conservation and tourism sector, where conservationists that are talking about natural resource management think because they went to school and they have a diploma, they are the conservationists. And I would challenge them. Fortunately, I had the language to do that, to say, I lived conservation. You can't tell me about conservation when you went to school. So you say these things because you don't only want to be seen, to be credible or whatever, but you challenge the status quo that you actually find. So I call myself a social disruptor at some stage, because even with these engagements, I ask these questions. Why do you have engagement on women issues and you exclude boys and men? It doesn't make sense. If you have a child, a son, you will know from me, I have 2 sons, I have a daughter, and I have 7 grandchildren. If I am preparing the world for a better humanity, I will never, ever actually have to discriminate. I want everybody to on board. Otherwise, that is why we do have the serious problems that we have, not only in South Africa. Why? This is, for me, another question that I have, is that we just cut and paste the global policies that talk about womanhood, that talk about women, without really contextualizing them from where we come from. So that's my story.
Beautiful.
Such a tough act to follow. So I'm Naadiya. I've just become elected president of Convocation, which actually in English I have learned is just the president of all university alumni. Now we all know, right? What does that mean? So I'm an engineer by background and studied at UCT, civil engineering undergrad, and did my master's in transportation engineering. And I had an incredible career. And Julie, I didn't know this, but I actually did work for FIFA during the World Cup. I ran their VIP transport operation for Cape Town Stadium.
Oh, wow.
And so I was involved. So I actually know how the stadiums worked on a daily basis during the World Cup. But I always had a dual career while I was at UCT, because being an engineer and being a minority in the engineering industry and going into work as an intern in the engineering industry as a woman, where we were about 5%. And my first job, I was the only female on a steel fabrication plant, led itself to a lot of the horrible things that the engineering industry has to offer. And at the time, I thought, wow, this is so horrible. I don't even want to work for this industry. I want to go work for a bank or a management consultancy. This is usually where engineers end up. And realized when I got back to UCT that if we all left, the industry would not change. And so we started very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, very naive, but so much passion to revolutionize the face of engineering. And we started actually in the engineering faculty, and the building is no longer there. They broke it down to build the new engineering building. But I remember sitting and actually designing this whole idea of how do we get university students to be able to and there was 5 things we wanted to focus on. We wanted to meet the minds. We wanted to bridge the gap between old engineers and young engineers. We wanted to support women in terms of being able to get jobs within the engineering industry while lobbying the industry for change. But we also wanted to show that women engineers were absolutely incredible and super intelligent, and the industry required us to be able to solve some of the biggest challenges that we face. And so we started WomEng on the foothills and at campus, and I see some WomEng fellows in the group, and we've seen 130,000 women and girls in 33 countries through the WomEng programs, because what we realized was the problem that we were facing as female engineers wasn't a local one, it was a global one. How do we get more women and girls into engineering and tech careers? And so I had this dual career path, which was almost this like multiple career disorder, like how we have a multiple personality disorder, because I was an engineer and it was really important for me to become a technical engineer. And I went into engineering. As a specialist transport engineer, I coded all the traffic signals in Cape Town. So if the robots are just not aligned, you must be like, damn, Naadiya, what were you thinking? I then had the opportunity for the work that we were doing at WomEng on campus, and now we call it diversity and inclusion, but before we didn't have these words for all of these things. I won a UCT Outstanding Leadership Award.
Wow.
Except it wasn't the first prize, it was the third prize, because the first prize was 10,000 Rand, and I was so excited because I was like, we need the money for WomEng. But we didn't win that one, or the second prize, which was 5,000 Rand. I won the third prize, which was an international exchange to any partner university. And I was like, I don't know who did the math there. Maybe not an engineer. But and so I went to Germany as part of during my master's, and I spent a year at the University of Stuttgart in Germany, which was absolutely incredible. I had to learn to speak German, and came back to South Africa at the height of the 2010 construction and rollout. And so to be part of actually building a country's infrastructure as an engineer is incredible. I was part of the build at Cape Town Stadium, the Athlone Stadium. There's a grandstand that, I was on the site, checking the nuts and bolts, making sure it was all in order. There's a airport ramp at the parking area at Cape Town Airport. That's also mine. And then, of course, the VIP transport operation, which honestly, to a young transport engineer, was the ultimate goal, right? I mean, I saw a bus full of Argentinian soccer players, including Lionel Messi and Maradona, cry like little babies when they lost at Cape Town Stadium. It was absolutely incredible. And then the bus driver forgot to put off the lights of the bus. And then I saw the Uruguay team having to push the bus, which was also absolutely incredible. And so, it was interesting. And after that, I got into development consulting and worked for a company called Pegasus Strategy, where we were working on climate change and rolling out public transport, including Go George. We weren't responsible for naming it, but the public transport system in George which is called Go George, so not that great in the naming, and worked on things like the Gautrain, the parking pieces. So it was really interesting and exciting, except we were also working on growing women at the same time. And so that's why I said I was this engineer, but I was also the social innovator, creating the space and the opportunity to scale and support women in the engineering industry. But I solve for pain, right? And so every pain we faced as engineers, as entrepreneurs, we started building out. And that's how I've literally built my career in supporting women. And at some point, I had to make the really hard decision to say, do I stay in corporate, or do I leave and actually go? And the Nigerians say you have a 5 to 9 and a 9 to 5, right? So do I actually just focus on one thing? And had to leave corporate because we were scaling to different countries. And at the time, was really interesting because I also was got married, started a family. I've got 2 kids. One you can hear potentially in the background is 18 months old. And I travel with him everywhere because I'm his food source. And my 7-year-old was really upset that he doesn't get to travel everywhere. So the complexities and judging 2 very strong personalities. And then became a guardian to a 12-year-old girl. So I went from 0 to teenage girl overnight over the last 4 months. So that's fun and exciting and interesting. And all those things rolled up to one. And so, building an organization that actually means something to people, that has value, but also solving for critical pain. And so my role at WOMHub is a couple of things. I look after strategic partnerships, which just means in English that I try and make as much money for the company as possible so that we are sustainable. The second thing is product innovation. And so I'm really excited. Some people call themselves futurists. This is probably the bucket that I would fall in, is looking at what are the challenges that we're going to face in the world, and can we create solutions to solve them in a sustainable way. And so at WOMHub, we do 4 things. We build female engineering and tech talent. We run incubators and accelerators to support female entrepreneurs. We build these incredible innovation spaces here in Cape Town, Johannesburg, East London, South Africa, and the next one will be out of the country as we're scaling our spaces. And the last thing is, a lot of the work that we're doing, it doesn't matter if we can't move money into the hands of women entrepreneurs so they can grow their business. Only 2% of venture capital investment went into female-owned companies. And so we actually wanted to start a bank, but it's really hard to start a bank. So we started a venture capital fund called 535 Ventures, which is a $30 million fund that we're currently raising. And so to invest in women entrepreneurs. And so 535 and WOMHub are probably the most active capital movers into the hands of women anywhere on the continent. And it's really important for us to be able to do things that really have meaning on a daily basis. And that's really my why. And then the last kind of bucket of work that I'm absolutely passionate about is, as we go tech, and I absolutely love tech, we assign our digital rights away without even thinking about it. We accept those terms and conditions without reading the terms and conditions. And so I've become obsessed with cybersecurity. And how do we keep people, specifically young people, young women, old people, actually everybody, how do we keep everybody safe online? And when you start to see what artificial intelligence is doing at this point in time, the other day I saw they took a picture of the Mona Lisa and added Rihanna's Rhapsody to it. So literally the Mona Lisa was singing and sounded like Rihanna rapping. Yes, and it looked real and scary as hell, because they can take my image, they can take your words and merge it. And so how do we protect ourselves in a digital future? And how we take our kids? And so that's what I'm obsessed with. That's what keeps me up at night. And that's what I love to do.
We have very busy people in the house. She says we have really, really powerful women in the house. So we have a social entrepreneur, a social disruptor, a self-disruptor. Managed to disrupt self. And I also was involved in 2010 World Cup. Ask me how. I attended a match.
and that's all. Also watched a lot of them on TV. So really, really privileged to meet such powerful women. I was also a cattle header, but I never, ever gave myself a chance to pause like this powerful woman right here who paused and said, where does my power come from in corporate? And only now that I've started conversations with her, I've started asking myself questions. So clearly, the three of you have asked yourselves deep questions in the past maybe couple of decades in your lives, and you decided, I'll self-disrupt, I will social disrupt, and I will be a social entrepreneur and leave corporate. And we would like to just double click on maybe there's just one key thing that you learned in that journey. One key pearl of wisdom. Just double click. I'm sure there's a lot of them, but I want you to just think about that one aspect that in your journey really shaped who you are today. And we're going to start with you, Dumi. Okay. So, there have been so many lessons in my life and so much reflection along the way. And I think the first one, obviously, was when I decided to leave legal practice. And when I made the decision that going forward, whatever I did, I needed to see what I do on a daily basis, making an impact in someone else's life. So whether I find myself being in tourism or whether I find myself being a mother or whatever it is, that's my mission in life. But a lot of lessons in our lives and a lot of change is often preceded by failure, you know. And I've had several in my life, some that were so obvious to myself and everyone around me, and some that were I only knew myself. And so I'll just speak about two. I think the first one was, and this is now in retrospect, right? When I look back at my life and I say, okay, that looked like success, but it actually wasn't, you know. And that came when very early on in my career as a lawyer, I was made partner, and I mean, it's fantastic. First Black woman partner in this law firm and top 5, top 3 in the country. And it made some news. And it was exciting for me. It was exciting for my friends and family. But, I knew that during that period, more especially much later on, that there were so many things that I wish I could have done. And even at the time, I knew that I should be doing this. So what I mean by that was, being a first Black woman in something is really a burden. And it was for me. It was an incredible burden because, you don't have a blueprint on how to do this thing. You work with, at any given moment, you're surrounded by men, and in my case, white men. And now I look back on, or not even now, like much later, I would look back and I would say to myself, I wish I had spoken up about some of the things that I was seeing, about some of the things I was experiencing that I knew my younger colleagues would experience as well, particularly young Black women. And to your point, you were saying, you learned very earlier on in life to speak up about the things that were important for you, and you would walk into a room and disrupt. That's been your modus operandi. And for me, it wasn't. It didn't come naturally. My natural way of doing things was to be polite, was to be likable, and was to do the right thing. And I guess that comes a lot as well from how we're raised, right? The need I was telling them, so we had this prep. And, my grandmother, who was very much into good manners and politeness and be a lady and sit in a particular way and speak in a particular way. But I'm not saying just her, my entire childhood, I lived around people like that. But I think I may have been born like that too. So that's been my lesson in life, to learn to disrupt, to speak up about important things that I'm seeing, that I'm experiencing, that other people around me are experiencing, and which I view as unjust, and where I believe that change needs to happen. So, I wish, as the first Black woman partner and the first Black man partner, by the way. So the standards were set very high. I was the second Black person, but first Black woman. The first Black person who had become a partner was Patrice Motsepe, who had been there a few years before me. So when I came in, he had been gone. He was already starting to make money. So, people saw it as something great. So I really do wish I had known then what I learned later on, that it's important to take people who are with you, who look like you, who are experiencing, who have your experiences, and that when you are given a seat at the table, it doesn't matter who likes you and who doesn't like you. I think that lesson came later on in life for me. So, and I've been trying to make up for it wherever I go. So that for me was the internal failure that, I don't talk about much and I don't admit much, because, it's nice to keep the facade, the title of, yeah, Black woman this. But actually, I could have done it differently, and it would have changed the path for so many other Black women and even white women who were coming up after me. For instance, I had my first child at that time, so I was quite senior. And after lunch, I would get so sleepy. But I would go into my car. We were working in Sandton City. That's where our offices were. And I would go to my car in the basement and fall asleep for an hour. Now, that's not normal, you know? Most women, not all women, will get pregnant. And honestly, should a woman go to a basement and close her eyes just because I need an hour of sleep and then get back to the office? Like, when you're 8 months pregnant, there are certain things that happen that are standard. So I could have said, let's put this agenda on the table. This is what women go through. It's a part of life. How can this organization make sure that we have either a mother's room or what? I'm sure now it happens, but it could have happened when I was there, but it didn't, because I didn't say anything. So it's important, I think, particularly for young people, to recognize your own power and to give yourself permission to speak. To not let fear hold you back, or whether it's fear or whether it's the need to be likable, or whatever it is that you feel that person's too powerful or more powerful than me, so therefore I can't speak. And yeah, it's a lesson I've had to learn. And I think the more obvious failure that I've experienced, which really changed my life as well, came when I was the CEO of this industry body. Again, first Black woman in 100 years. And I was just like, why do these things follow me? Because again, at that time I thought, they follow me because you didn't do it correctly the first time around. Now you're being given an opportunity. Now you've grown up. Let's do this. And did I do this? But with the doing it came what still I consider to be the biggest failure in my life. And that means, I was brought into the organization. It was 2012, organization had not been transformed. So my mandate was, please drive transformation. And I was like, democracy happened in 94. Why are we still talking transformation? Why am I still the first Black woman anything in this day and age? So then obviously, I thought so many things needed to change. And I was going ahead with the change. I mean, they'd given me permission, right? That was my mandate. But as soon as we started the need, and as soon as we put plans to the board and said, okay, this is what change means. You have to give some of what you have so that someone else can get, and then, they all decided, no, 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 no. Yes, we said we want transformation, but not quite in the manner in which you are presenting it. Yeah, not really. And so, it was a very difficult moment for me and moments, because it lasted. I was there for 3 years and I tried. And at every board meeting, I'm presenting this, like, okay, no, come back to the next board meeting and maybe look at this and look at that. And eventually you recognize that actually this is not going to happen. And, I looked at myself, and for the first time I felt, oh my goodness, I'm failing. But, what I'm not talking about here with that failure is, having grown up a Black woman and sitting with just white men. I mean, I'd experienced it before as a lawyer, so it wasn't such a major thing, I thought, except it was. Because you sit with people and you think, so you have your own internal struggles, like, do they take me seriously? I mean, the only Black woman they've only ever encountered is the person who makes them tea or cleans their home. So how do they see me in relation to those, so there was a lot internally that I had to deal with and overcome. And then, of course, on the technical side of things, I just wasn't doing what I had been asked to do, because change is hard. And that's what I hadn't known, that change takes time. But like most failures, you often find good in it. Because I phoned a friend of mine in Cape Town. I was like, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. These people, they are difficult to deal with, and, they call me names behind my back. It was just a tough environment to be in. And she said to me, no, that's not what you do. When the tough gets going, you do not leave. And she said, I'm going to get you a book. Read this book and let's talk afterwards. And this book was written by a professor from Harvard called Ronald Heifetz. And it was called Leading Dangerously. And I read it and I was like, wow, people actually go to school. Like, it seemed like the man was in my head. He knew what I was going through. And I said, I'm going to Harvard. I absolutely have to go to Harvard because this man needs to teach me. I applied to Harvard. Lo and behold, 12 months later, I was sitting in a master's class. I resigned, left everything in South Africa, got to Boston. And so there's a system when you get to Harvard where you sign up for classes, but you actually have to buy. They give you like 100 points because some classes get oversubscribed. And this guy's class was really popular at the time. He's like a psychiatrist who decided to leave psychiatric practice and get into leadership. But he takes everything that he's been practicing in psychiatry and uses it in how to lead. And so his classes were always oversubscribed. And you have 100 points. So there are many other popular classes. So his class went for like 95 points, which means you can't get some of the other popular classes. I gave all of my points. I said, I want Heifetz. And I mean, it was incredible. So before I actually even went to him, I'd written him a letter, an email. And I said, hi, I'm in South Africa. This is my name. I read your book. And it just opened my eyes because I'm facing this at work and so on. He never replied. Okay, he was a Harvard professor. I was taking my chances. But when I got there, I went to him and I said, I sent you an email and I want to be in your class, and this is why. And the most amazing thing about this class, This man said, we spent the first 6 months of his class. He said, give me the biggest failure of your life. And that's going to be your case study about leadership. And we went deep and deep and deep into why you failed. And obviously, I had my failure, which I had considered my failure. But the thing about this failure was I thought we would talk about, tactics, we would talk about the strategy. And it was so not that. It was about who are you? What do you believe in, and why do you believe in it? And what are why did you make the decisions that you made? When you are speaking, is it you speaking, or is it your grandmother or your mother? And you need to give yourself permission. Those people were there, then you are here now. Who are you? So anyway, so I spent, so that for me was a failure. And I'm so glad because, now I can talk about it as a story. There was a time in my life when I couldn't talk about it without crying. My experience as a CEO, and now it's just like, wow, that happened to me. So I mean, I came back, got my master's from Harvard, and going forward, and that has shaped how I view leadership. To say leadership is not a technical capability that you have. Yes, we learn about it, but to master your leadership, you need to master yourself first. And unless you're doing that on a daily basis, which takes hard work, you are not mastering or leading where you are placed. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we need a full day with each and every one of them, don't you? We just want to double click in there, right? And go deep into that silencing, into that being the minority on the table, and being in your little corner. And I can almost look back in the 24 years of my experience, 15 years of those, that was me in a corner, sitting and being the minority and thinking, I can't even voice out what's happening inside. And getting home and thinking, but why didn't I voice it out? I can't even put it on email. And then going on the next day and going on the next day. And 15 years later, a complete career change as well into leadership development now. Because I couldn't stand it. So I believe many of us have gone through that. This sense of, you call it self-silencing, or you call it the feeling of being silenced, but nobody said you should be silent. Nobody took out a policy to say, all of you can speak except from Dumi. Right? But you were quiet the whole time, and that deep sense of regret that you have, year after year, you get that performance bonus, you get that recognition, you get accolades and all of that, and you're not so proud because there's this tiny bit of regret inside of you. And Tumi says she mastered that through personal mastery, knowing thyself. And you can see somebody who went through a very deep journey of just dedicating, I want to know myself, 6 months sabbatical, soul searching. And then, okay, fine, time to stop this and read this book. When she was recommended a book, she read it, she dug in there. And then she said, okay, now who's this professor? And then said, okay, now I'm going to resign and go and find this person and write the email. A real example of self-disruption. So deep. So I would like you at this point just to internalize. And if you do have a story to share too about self-disrupting, you're most welcome to join in and share your story. But also just internalize and think about, am I self-disrupting enough? Am I asking myself enough questions about myself? And how am I showing up? And who am I manifesting She said she had to ask, is it my mom or my grandma or my culture or my background or my dad or who? Who am I? And what is my own voice? And I believe in our journeys of leadership, that's a very important question to ask. Dedicating that time and making that commitment to just deep in insight about yourself. I often say the highest level of literacy is self-literacy, is knowing thyself. Do we dig deep enough to know ourselves? And this leads me to a next panelist. Mvusi seemed to also have had a chance in life to go there, to a point where she thought, wait a minute, how did I grow up? And how is it showing up in the place that I'm leading? And wait a minute, my parents, my brothers, my community, the cattle that were accompanying me most of the time, all of that. And could you just double click on how did that impact your leadership? And I would like you to also give it a specific focus around, we often speak about feminine leadership and masculine leadership. Did this manifest itself in a way that drove a certain style of leadership? And what was that leadership and how did it show up?
Speaking out has got its own disadvantages. Absolutely. So whilst I had the power in my community at the time, and that gave me the skills to negotiate, to actually exercise the power. As I grew up, especially when I got into unfriendly spaces of the workplace, the boardroom, I then realized this space was never meant for inclusion. Even worse, for belonging. Something that we don't talk about. We talk about only, we end up with inclusion. You can include people, but if they don't belong into that space, you're silencing them. Something that organizations don't do. So obviously I created many enemies. Hopefully I won't create them here. Other doors were shut. By the way, these things don't happen only within the workspace. Remember, you are a holistic person, and it happens at home, your siblings, your children, in spaces where we stay, we work, we play, and worship. And I kind of like the social disruptor. And I ask these questions, why are Christians so judgmental? Why are people like this? And I asked there are two things I want to share with you. Firstly, I questioned the whole notion of leadership. What does leadership mean? Leadership is not in what I have read in the Gibbs executive thing I went to. What does it take for my mother and all the rural women who actually looked after the community when the men were not there? Isn't that leadership? But we don't talk about it. And it raised another question for me, because I was going through my internal issues where people were asking me or even labeling me because of what they see or hear from me without understanding the deeper complexity of Mvusi. You act like a man. Where does that take you? Even in relationships. Even in relationships, because when you get there, remember we're talking about the things that people don't talk about here. So even in relationship, I see this trend. I'm attracting these men that want to be mothered. Why? Because I'm a giver, I'm goal-oriented, I am a achiever. It's about this thing. So everybody's a child to me. And the father, so even my father was my role model. So the only thing I see, this is what I do. I don't feel. So all these questions were about the struggles that I had internally. Why do people see me like this when I don't intend to this? I want to be a woman or whatever. And I grew up as a tomboy. But the question again is about this whole thing about womanhood. Human beings. Women are human beings, first and foremost. We are all different. We are intellectual beings, we are spiritual beings, we are emotional beings. We all have different interests. I can tell you right now, not all women that are sitting here have the interest of women at heart. There's this notion that women should support each other. Really? Really? Why do we have these unrealistic expectations that because I'm a woman, I have to be strong, I have to be independent, and I have to support other women? Yet, there are other women whose values are totally different from mine. Why should we? Again, it's this cutting and paste women empowerment. We must empower these women, so they must group together. Have you seen how many women-led projects, developmental projects in South Africa have failed? We don't talk about those things. Okay, we become technical. Okay. So the whole notion that women are supposed to have babies and then they have to get married to be seen to be successful. So if you are the other, or if you think differently, you are actually getting labeled, you are judged and whatever. You can be judged by your own parents, your sisters, and everybody else who knows you because you think differently. So my question was around this other. And this other is not necessarily men. So as I was questioning myself, and I was like, and I obviously reading and also through the coaching that I do, and I find a lot of women coming in and like they are stuck with being comfortable with spaces they know because there's this sense of belonging. What do they call that syndrome? Absolutely.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
syndrome.
I can tell you right now, a lot of executive women, they suffer that. Not only that, we all have our own demons to confront. And when you see us as young people wearing lipstick, and in fact, my book I wrote was Lipstick Chronicles because I was kind of like, I want to challenge this supposedly empowered women with high heels, that they know everything, that they are the thing, that they have arrived and whatever. We have our own demons, guys. The board, the council, your peers in the boardroom, They put so much pressure on us that when my husband, my partner, my children, or I might be going through a stage in my life, I'm a man on menopause or I'm menstruating or whatever. All those things, the silencing that we are experiencing, it's body, someone else, even the system. I take this, I show up with all those. And until we get to realize that women are like any other person, they have their own issues, we will stop doing either the upward bullying or the group bullying or that kind of bullying. We have to be kind to each other and ask, I wonder, what is she going through? Maybe the poor woman didn't sleep. Didn't sleep. And here you are, you're like, because you are a masculine vusi. And all I'm interested in, I know, KPIs, targets, that's all. I'm interested in percentages of what I have achieved. And my team, don't tell me about problems. Come to me with solutions. And all I do, I'm like, so, because I haven't tapped into the feminine traits that I have. And I leave this point by saying, please note that it's like the genes we have. All of us have got feminine and masculine traits. All of us. All what we have to do is to actually strike the balance. I might do something like this, exhibit more masculine traits when I am, for instance, in difficult conversations. You know, I have to be direct, I have to process it, whatever, or managing a project, whatever. But the very same vusi can go home and be a loving, feminine, person. Or even at work, I can still exhibit that. So the notion that there's masculine, men are masculine, whatever, and women, it's flawed. It's a very flawed concept. And in these discussions, we need to deconstruct some of those things. How many men have you seen crying, although they were socialized to talk to, you mustn't cry. They're emotional. Which means they do have I have had, unfortunately, I have never been supervised by a woman. Thank you. I'm not sure what I would have done, especially at that time. So I had supervisors of men, and most of these men had more feminine leadership. Most of them. I have had black and white, the most caring men who were in the top of the organization. In fact, because I speak too much, I was in trouble to such an extent that a new black CEO, when he joined the organization, I can't mention his name because you will know him, got a 7-page letter written in Afrikaans by a group of Afrikaans people that I was working with in the Free State. It was far back as 1998. And the instruction was, I must be fired. You know why? Because I was managing an education symposium here in the Free State and whatever. This whole transformation was starting, and we had Indian schools, black school, African schools who used to be there dominating and whatever. And it was the first time that symposium was so diverse and inclusive. So who was there? I was Mvusi. There were things I couldn't tolerate, of course. There are things I couldn't tolerate. I couldn't tolerate a young boy actually, bullying the other ones, and then when I intervene, and then he goes kafir. You know what I did? It was just an instinct from me. Okay, I'm not a fighter. But I grabbed him, I put him in the corner, and I'm like, you will never, ever, I didn't say anything, I didn't hit him or whatever, say this to any black person again. Never. Exile your donor. And I left. So the whole meeting happened, and in the morning, boardroom, everybody was there, apparently during braai. This is what happens again with women who are executive. People have meetings outside the boardroom. By the time you get there, decisions have been made. I mean, I'm part of the executive here. Really? Why didn't I be part of this discussion? But when I get there, then there's the whole full... And this is what happens. And all I said, guys, I'm on probation. If you really want to take me out, you can. But I'm going to challenge you because I moved from Cape Town and I came here to the Free State for a reason, to transform this place. And I knew I couldn't speak Afrikaans or even Sesotho for that matter. But I'm a South African. Just do it. Do you know that 7-page letter where it took me? It took me to Cornell the following year. Sabbatical. As a manager. To do develop. So all I'm saying is that, speaker, so I was at Cornell, I was a Hubert Humphrey Fellow, prestigious kind of program. And when you put Hubert Humphrey Fellow, what followed in 2 years' time, you Ford Foundation Fellow, you got... So there are advantages and disadvantages of all these things. All what we need to do, which I have learned later, is to be authentic.
Yeah.
Listen to the discerning voice, but lead with grace.
Sure.
I can say anything. It's like now you are laughing. The people that were part of this thing would not have laughed. But the humility that you should also own is that you don't know everything. When you say, I don't know anything about digital, don't this thing. I really, really love to engage young women because we learn from young women. They think faster. I was brought up in, it is just for me, the message is also just do embrace other people. We diverse and we will continue to be. Otherwise, we are robbing ourselves of growth and also of exposure, intercultural exposure. Go somewhere. Don't say, oh, this tribe, this Venda, this Zulu, this is just a whatever. A construct. So how do we translate? We talk about leadership, but I also talk about scholarship. Is that when you grow up, you do research, take topics, because Africa is still seen as the world of negativity, everything negative. What is your role as a young woman and a young leader in amplifying the voices of an African woman?
Sure.
What is your role? Are you really regurgitating what is in the leadership? I haven't seen any leadership book, African leadership model. Mina, I'm going to write cattle heading as a leadership model.
Love it. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. How beautiful is that we could spend a whole day, maybe a whole week with each one of them now. The more we hear their stories, the more we just want to dive deep. Are we going to be offering leadership courses around the subjects, full day leadership courses and full week leadership courses, please? Yay! I'm writing a proposal and my facilitators are right here to UCT alumni. Thank you so much for sharing from woman being to human being, from womanhood to humanhood. And she says, be kind, and everything is contextual. And she says, be authentic, be yourself. In that moment, feel what is right and move beyond your intellect and feel and bring all of yourself into decision making. Your intellect, your feeling, your emotion, your experience, bring it all in the present. And I absolutely loved what you said there, that we might be celebrating and saying, wow, now, but in that time, I can't even imagine those around you were probably quite judgmental. How dare you? We're trying to alleviate poverty and get into corporate and make money, and here you are destroying all of your chances. What are you doing? Why are you speaking up? Why are you disrupting? And it must have been very unpleasant. But later on, it's a beautiful story. We are all creating our own stories every single day in our lives, in our own way. Own it. Just be present with every moment. Now, please forgive us about time. We started at 7 o'clock. We had scheduled this for an hour, 30 minutes, so we'll go up to 8:30. Is that okay? Yes, because I would really love Naadiya to also have sufficient time and not feel rushed, even as people have to go. Please stay in until, give me just up to 7:30. I would like her to have sufficient time to. This lady right here has managed to create a perfect place of intersection between three concepts that were supposed to be mutually exclusive. What were those concepts? When I read her story, when I engaged with her, as we prepared to this, I was like, passion, purpose, profit. For us, we see three different circles, isn't it? I'm passionate about music, and you do that on weekend, and it doesn't make money. Find my purpose in serving in church on Sunday, and that's it, to separate. Oh, I make my money at work 8 to 5. Naadiya challenged that, brought it all together into an intersection that we get to enjoy and experience today, right, at Warm Hub. There are so many different hubs. I've been involved in hundreds of hubs across the continent. I haven't come one that's specifically for women and women in engineering, and I find it absolutely amazing. How did you find that intersection? How, and give us this model, because all of us have various visions, isn't it? And we really want 8 to 5 to also be a place where you live out of passion and purpose, isn't it? And drill over to 9 to 5 and 8 to 9 to 4, 5, whatever you called it there. You said you're Nigerian, people call it.
You're 9 to 5 and you're 5 to 9.
5 to 9. We want it all, right? And we want to find that perfect place of intersection. How did you find that?
Sure, and I mean, when we started, way back at UCT, almost 20 years ago, we started as a non-profit organization, and it was all student volunteers. In fact, some people in the room are volunteers from those programs. And it was all about, we want to do good in the world, we want to change the world, we want to revolutionize the face of engineering, and that literally was our tagline, right? And we all had things on the side, we all had day jobs to pay for all of this, and everybody was a volunteer. And it was the heyday of engineering where, we went to corporates and they were like, oh, we believe in these girls because they've got so much energy. You're so cute. We'll sign a check for you. And it was interesting for us because for us, we were really focused on the work, on the mission. and we were so passionate about our mission. And I remember when we were starting out, we were trying to get money for this idea of supporting women and getting more girls excited about engineering. We even wrote to Oprah, right? And we were like, "Dear Oprah, you know, this is the idea to change the world." And like, some intern probably wrote back and said, "Thank you so much, but you know, we don't fund this." And a couple of years later, she opens a school here in Joburg, but we'll talk about that at a later date. But what's interesting, you know, for us is, you know, as we were doing the work, we were always just asking for the bare minimum all the time. And when we think about it, when you're living on the bare minimum, you are always living from negative to zero. You are never living from zero to prosperity, right? And so what happened was we weren't then there for any of the shocks that the industry and the economy would give us. And so when engineering was in its heyday, the organization was cash flush, and we could complete our mission because we were asking for so little. And then what happened was recession hit, right? The crane stopped going up, the money was gone, 2010 was done, the vuvuzelas were down, right? And the challenge was how do we complete our mission when we don't have money? And we then went into a really painful process of going, how is it that we take what we do and we look at the business imperative? Because what we're doing is we actually are quantifying impact in a commercial sense, right? We're in the business of selling impact. And so how is it that we can find companies that need the impact, right? Because what we're doing is the social good, yes, but it's absolutely a business imperative. And so we started to change our thinking. But it was really hard because everybody associated us with things that were cute and fluffy. Oh, these girls are so cute, right? And we had these pink hard hats, and it was amazing because we were working with all these girls, but the perception in the market was, these girls are so cute, we don't take them seriously, right? And so we then started working, one of our organizations that we work with them in 9 different countries. And it was an amazing partnership. But actually what they would do was they would not pay us. And they would take 8 months, 9 months, 10 months to pay us. And they'd always tell us, the check is in the mail. Right? They'd be like, oh, we're really sorry, you know, it's with supply chain, oh, you know, procurement, blah, 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 check is in the mail, right? And actually one year we physically got a check in the mail, right? For 100,000 Rand, a physical check in the mail, right? But what that did was that we could never really grow and expand as an organization because we were always living from zero to negative back to zero. And what happened was, and I think this was really a pivotal moment for us, was we were working with them in multiple countries, and it was such a beautiful project because the PR was so amazing, right? When you looked on social media, it was just incredible. We were in Brazil, we were in Mexico, we were in the US, we were in the UK, we were in Thailand, we were in Vietnam, and we were in South Africa, and we were in Kenya, and that was the social media piece. The backstory was that we were about $200,000 in debt, right? And we didn't have $200,000. We had quit our jobs as engineers because we were like, no, we all in, right? This is our passion, right? This is our purpose, this is our mission. And at the time I had my first son who was, just born, and I couldn't go to Brazil because of the Zika virus. So my business partner went, but I mean, I sacrificed. I stopped breastfeeding my son at 2 months because we had to go to the US to run a program. And so what can I do? I left him at home, and I went to the US to run a program for our client because it's about the mission. And then what happened was, came back, and actually we were so, when you're so deeply in debt that like the banks are phoning, like everybody's after you, right? Started losing weight, and everybody, the minute you had a baby and you lose the weight rapidly, everybody's just like, what's your secret? You're so lucky. Yeah. My sister was like, I hate you. You're so thin. You lost all that baby weight, right? But actually the stress of not having the money in the bank, having people that depend on you, having programs that have to run, but you actually have no idea where it's going to come from, actually gave me an incurable disease. Literally, I have a disease called fibromyalgia, which is an inflamed muscle disease. So sometimes when people hug me, I cringe just because my muscles I'm always in pain, right? I don't know a life that doesn't have pain because they financially abused me, right? And you see fibromyalgia actually a lot more in abused women. So it's a form of abuse. And then what really broke me, and there were two moments for me and one moment for my co-founder Hema, was I had to switch my son from formula to cow's milk because I couldn't afford it. Right. And so I am. I've got a master's degree in engineering from UCT. I could go and walk into a job anywhere in the world, right? And I didn't have to deal with all of this, right? But I was about the mission. And then I had to make some decisions about my child, who's now asthmatic. And I'm not saying he's asthmatic because of the formula and cow's milk issue, but hey, moms get blamed for everything right now, so including acts of God. So how are we supposed to handle all of that? And my business partner, Hema, she had to go to a meeting, and she didn't have the 10 Rand for parking to pay for when she went to this meeting, right? And then as life would have it, because life has a sense of humor, the company who hadn't paid us for 8 months was hosting a competition, Global Social Entrepreneur of the Year Award, right? They're all about showcasing good. And we were in the finals. And literally all I had to do was I was there because I needed to win it for the money for us, right? It's about the mission. And they flew us to London. They gave us training on leadership and business skills, how to manage your business effectively. It's very helpful. And then you pitch, right? And I will never forget the story because it's so important around how we value ourselves. But, they pitch you off in categories. And we were pitched off in SDGs, and I was in the gender category. And it was ourselves, and at the time, 60,000 women and girls, 7 countries that we were operating in, against a Canadian young woman who moved to Kenya, was there for 6 months, working in the slums of Kibera with 137 women who were doing childcare from home, right? And we were pitching off against each other. 60,000 impact, 137 mamapreneurs that she called them. She was in Kenya for 6 months from Canada. And she won. And I was devastated. I was snot and trana devastated, right? Because I failed. I failed my team. I failed my organization. I failed the mission. I failed everything. And we were talking about the heels. I used to wear the killer heels. I used to wear makeup. I used to look amazing when I walked out to the nines with all the latest things. And that is the point that I stopped wearing heels. I started wearing sneakers, right? And I haven't gone back. I stopped wearing makeup. Guys, it was so bad. When I went for breakfast the next morning, nobody recognized me. But in that moment of Hema and I, we spent the whole night crying and consoling each other. She was in Joburg, I was here, right? And we realized we have to fire the client. And it was the hardest thing. How dare you, right? And the backlash you got, how dare you little girls, we gave you your start in life. Who do you think you are, right? But we fired them. But what they did was we were really focused on, if we're not chasing your own money, right, that is owed to you, it means that you are open to go and chase other money that could be yours, right? And that's what we did, was we focused and we pivoted the business out of this kind of non-profit poverty mentality into very much a for-profit. Because when women are billionaires, we do things that matter. We don't want to put people in space and do submarines. We want to go and fix the world's problems. And so now when we go, and Hema, my business partner, has taught us this, and Ange, our CEO, is in the audience and has enabled a lot of this, right? We always say we hunt like a pack of lionesses, because honestly, lions just sit in the sun, Lionesses are doing the most every day. They're doing everything, the childcare, the hunting, the gathering, the food, everything, all lionesses. So we hunt like lionesses. We're a pack, right? And that's the piece, is around, making sure that your tribe and that your pride is there, right? We look after each other's kids. We were in Italy last year, and literally Ange, as the CEO, we've got this joke. One day we're going to write a book about service leadership and how she washes our feet. Because we were like in the sand, I was holding a baby, she was washing my feet. There's a lot of feet stories that we have within our company, a naturally large amount. But what's incredible is that we've all got this hyper focus. The only way we have never made as much impact as we had as a business. When we were a nonprofit, it was amazing, and we love the work we do. And we still have the nonprofit, which is our foundation. But the for-profit company makes sure that that nonprofit will be sustainable, right? It means our foundation works where people won't fund us where there's a gap. We are about the commercial returns, right? And it's about, when they go, oh, women, we need to know our self-worth, right? And actually, we didn't. We told everybody, know your worth, but we never went, actually, this number, think about this number and come back to us. These days, when we go into meeting, we're like, okay, what's the number that you have in your head? And they're like, no, we can't disclose that, you tell us. I'm like, no, you tell me how much you have in your budget, right? And then we can talk about it. And I think that mindset of women negotiating for ourselves, and I always said I want to help women negotiate for themselves from the boardroom all the way to the bedroom. Because I think that a lot of the time we don't ask for what we want, everywhere in between. And I think that's the piece around how we marry purpose, and we are a completely purpose-driven company. The profits enable us to go and do amazing things around the world, and we make incredible impact on a daily basis. And so if you see the spaces that we're in, every brick, every light bulb, everything in this hub has been blood, sweat, and tears with us at WOM Hub, and our team were absolutely incredible. And we've got hubs in Cape Town, hubs in Johannesburg, hubs in East London. But what's amazing about the hubs is we've built it for us. So we've got, you can hear my kid in the background. He's just like that, these guys. We've got lactation lounges. We've got a menopause room because honestly, women need to decompress. Every woman will go through menopause. Not every woman will have a baby, right? Why have we not figured this out yet? So we've got a menopause room. In our Cape Town hub, we've got a junior engineer hub, which is a co-play space, so you can bring your kid, so that you can do these things. You can attend these events while they're there, and that one is soundproof. So we are going to be building one in here as well. It's part of our renovation process, raising our own money, spending it. So there's my child's, university fund being spent in smart ways. But we're not just a co-working space, right? If you look at the screens behind us, as well as if you take a walk around, we have a global partnership with Cisco, which is the largest tech company in the world. And they've given us all the tech in the space. And we have got the latest technology that it was the first time it landed in Africa, landed in our hubs. They always talk about the power of Cisco to connect everybody. And we like the power of WOM Hub to convene everybody, to use the space, to democratize access to some really expensive technology that we would never have. But we have a very strategic, and this is why you must always be strategic, right, in your partnerships. You can partner with anybody, but why are we strategic about Cisco, for example? Cisco is the largest acquirer of technology in the world. They don't do R&D, right? They just find really cool companies and they buy them. We make really cool companies by supporting female entrepreneurs. We invest in them with our venture capital fund, and then we partner with Cisco. And we show Cisco all our really cool companies, and then Cisco buys the companies, and we make money in the exit, right? You've got to be strategic, and you've got to think about these networks and these connections. And then the last thing, because I know we're running out of time, but I want to wrap up because these events are amazing. When women get together, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about the challenges. We talk about our shoes. Hey, cool shoes. Yeah, your shoes are amazing. I love your outfit, right? None of us are going, hey, guys, what do you do? Okay, cool. Do you have a budget for what I do? What kind of business deals are we doing? And, I've seen men connect with each other, and they're just like, this is what I do, this is what you do. Let's talk about like a deal, right? And I'm going, my husband always goes, Naadiya, you always go to all these meetings, but you never make any money. And he's not wrong, right? Because he literally comes from nothing, goes to a meeting, and suddenly there's cash flowing, and I look at this man, and I'm just like, dude, you need to go to my meetings. But it's around like when we are in the spaces, can we unlock it? And we're starting to see this, right? We've got some great examples. I'm just looking at you of people in the room are going, we've got budget and we want to do these cool things. We know you do these cool things. Let's do cool things together. And more, as women get into C-suite executives level, it's not just about making sure we have lactation lounges and menopause rooms. It's also that the money flows, right? And it creates prosperity for us all so that we actually lift everybody as we rise.
Sure. Do you feel like a full day course with her? Now this time a course, like teachers, show us how to do this. How do I align my organizational purpose with that big corporate so that some of their profit flows into my organization? It's a concept, it's there, it's called shared value, and organizations are using it, but I think we're talking about it less in this kind of groups. We hear about it in other spaces. I love what you said about when we get together, we keep talking about challenges and nice shoes. Yes, my nice yellow shoes are really cool, I know that. But why don't you ask me what I do? And how can I benefit your organization? How can we have mutually benefit each other and meet tomorrow and have a business deal? Why should you stay unemployed when I have opportunity in the organization that I work for? Why should you struggle financially when you have a degree at UCT and you have a skill and you can connect to anyone in here and ask and make those connections and talk value and talk passion, purpose, profit. Don't forget the 3 Ps that sort of came out as we chat about it. So with that, I'm going to invite, I know you have lots of questions for these 3 beautiful women. It would have really been great to have the time to harness those questions, have them answer some of those questions. I think I'm going to have space for 2 questions because I still have 7 minutes. And then after that, we're going to give you each post-it notes to give us ideas of the vision that the alumni office really has around this gathering here tonight. The first of the 4 in 4 different cities shortly is an ongoing conversation. The bigger vision is let's have an ongoing conversations. Let's create initiatives. Hopefully even initiatives around the 3 Ps, right? Where there will be financial gain too, right? And there will also be purpose exchanged and passion. And we build in, this is only a start of a movement. So we're going to ask you very kindly to share your thoughts, your ideas on how we can continue this conversation on those post-it notes that you're receiving. Does anybody have a burning question that you're like, I can't leave this room without Naadiya or Dumi or Mbuyi talking about answering this? Yes, ma'am.
My question is more about, as a young person, right, in corporate, who has aspirations to be a corporate beast, but also understanding that I want to lead from a place of grace. How do I navigate that space in a way where I'm able to speak up, knowing that there are sacrifices in that speaking up, but also not shying away because I'm trying, if I say nothing, let's keep the peace. I'm not trying to be let's keep a peace kind of person, but also understanding the level where I'm at and the fact that I might not be at a level where I'm able to make those sacrifices and say, either way, I will speak. Because the honest truth is, I'm 24, still trying and having aspirations to climb up this so-called corporate ladder. So how do I navigate climbing the corporate ladder without pissing people off?
That's such a brilliant question. Thank you. I'm sure it's a question for many of you, isn't it? I almost can recall 15 years back, I'm giving away my age, that tender early age, where I used to feel the self-silence, and then I would have this thing, I'm going to get so educated, and when I get there, I will speak my mind out. For now, I'll go home in silence and keep my peace and navigate this corporate ladder. And one day is one day. How do you balance that? That notion of, do you wait and say one day is one day, or is it that voice that will, get you to the top? We've also seen people's voices getting them to the top fast, right? What is it exactly, and how do you strike the balance? Does anybody want to take that?
Okay, so I can start. I think it's a very important question. And I think the fact that you are asking it, for me, is an indication that you are so mindful of where you are right now, your limitations in terms of where you currently sit within your organization, and therefore, for lack of a better word, the lack of authority that you may have. But what I will tell you is that even a CEO has his own or her own limitations in terms of the authority that they have. There are certain things that a CEO can say. There are certain things that they can't say because they hold that particular role within an organization. So every single person within an organization faces at some point or the other the question, should I speak? And how do I speak? How will it affect the position I have within this organization? And what you do not know, or when I was your age, I didn't know that that's a case. I thought, the CEO can say anything, anytime, because they have the authority, but they don't. So formal authority, but when I say formal, because you've been appointed as CEO or CFO, comes with its own limitations. So where am I going with this? At your level, yes, you have limitations, but the limitations you do not have are the willingness and the capacity to express your own authenticity. And that, for me, what I've learned is something that you must never, ever negotiate. Because you can keep the peace, there will be peace at work, but there'll be no peace inside you. So it kills you slowly. Having said that, but then how do you speak is your question. How do I verbalize what I feel? And there are various ways in which you can do it. First of all, you've got your own peers that you can speak to, and that's the easiest, right? Because you can go to someone else and say, whom we are at the same level with, and say, look, I'm struggling with this person or with this idea or with this issue. How will I go about it? You do have your immediate report. You can do so. I think what I gathered from you is it's the question of how do I do it with grace. That comes now with knowing yourself. How do I communicate in a way that is still respectful? So there are certain values that whether you are 19 or 90, every single person will actually, will identify with and will relate with. So, and respect is one of them. So when you put your point across, however unpopular it is, but you have to recognize that it may come with silencing, corporate silencing, which may mean they may make your job hard for you, you may get demoted or moved elsewhere, some kind of form of silencing. And it comes with experience, which obviously, with time. But what I would say to you is you must never negotiate yourself out of speaking, but finding a way to express it. And maybe, one of the things you may think to yourself, but I can't speak in this space. I wish there was like a network or some offices have staff association or whatever it is. So find an outlet and find allies within your organization. You may find that there's someone senior or junior that feels the same way that you do. So understand how you feel and understand who also feels the same way that I feel about particular issues in the organization. So create allies for yourself. Because when you share an issue with more than one person, it becomes easier to negotiate it. Know when to talk about it. And also, there's normally we want to keep the equilibrium, right? Our space is at equilibrium. There are no highs, there are no lows, because there's too much tension when, it shoots up. So equilibrium is always good. But there are times when you have to decide that how do I, as a person, create tension in order to bring an issue to the fore so that you are not the only person dealing with it. Other people come and deal with it with you. I mean, think about it in soccer, right? There are 11 players. You can find a player who will decide, I have to score the goal because, I want the glory. But there are 10 other players, or at least 2 other players that could score the goal. So the objective of all the 11 players is to score goals, is to win the match. And you only win a match by scoring. Your objective is to speak up about your issue. You've identified allies. You may not have to be the one that does the speaking. So find out who else feels the way that I do. Pass the ball. Let the other pass the ball. And help each other. What you want is to score the goal. You don't have to be the one that scores the goal. Yeah. So think about it along those terms.
Yeah. Sure. Just quickly for me, so that we can, dream peacefully. The reason why I wrote the book Lipstick Chronicles, The Warfare of Inclusion, was kind of like asking that question. And to add on to what the colleagues are talking to. So what I did was to interview executive women from Africa to here, but I chose them deliberately. And I also wanted the voices of men, you will know that by now. And men who worked with women at executive level to get that perspective. And the nuggets they actually spoke to are at different levels, because I was asking in what we called corporate socio-silencing. At a personal level, there are things that you have to do, you find allies, but most importantly, you need to find 2 things, could be 3 things. There's a sponsor, somebody who speaks on your behalf when you are not there, at a level above you, within the organization, that's allies. You must have a mentor, which is totally different from a sponsor. The mentor is somebody whom you aspire to be. If you're a scientist, that person has got the technical skills. So that's the person you can actually ask over tea. Yes, I wanted to do this thing and whatever, how do you do it? And then that person spends some time on a Saturday because is actually you aligned with. And the coach. A coach is somebody that is going to ask you these deeper questions that we went through. It's a painful, uncomfortable journey because you have to actually dig deeper, think about your own triggers, think about your own prejudices and how you're going to manage them yourself, and which is part of leadership. So this who you are is not a fluffy kind of thing. It's a very serious, evolving journey that you have to go through. and ask yourselves as things go, like the world evolves. For instance, one question I asked myself, we used to talk about women and men, women leadership. Now we have LGBTQ, what, T plus? Yes. And it's unfortunate, we might be laughing about it, but it's a serious thing. Because you don't know if your child that you're raising is going to be whatever. And even within the organization, there are people, others, who transgender whilst they are there. You appointed them as women. And you have to manage this thing. So the realization that leadership is a very painful and spiritual journey will make you want to even go outside to find people that can actually guide you. If you want a spiritual person, depending on what you want, you have to have a multiple kind of, networks, professional word networks about your job, but also these safe spaces where, as a woman, you can just, or whoever, you can just be and just talk and exhale. That's what we call it. So we have a moment of exhale that we actually manage with the group that I do have. It's about 220 people that I have on my WhatsApp. Every day we talk about the issues. Is intergenerational and whatever. And they identify these kind of topics. Bullying at the workplace, we find a facilitator. We sit there, and then we have a facilitator. We talk about leading emotional intelligence, So unfortunately, there is no one answer. There is no, trust me, there's no formula. Have you heard that said there's no formula in finding a man or having a man or parenting? There's no one answer because, again, we are totally different. And there are other issues that have to do with managers, how you lead people that are intergenerational. Kuko X, Y, Z, whatever. If you have me born that age and you ask me to manage a 2K person, I have to have another mindset, which is different from another one that comes. And these are the struggles that we do have. So just always be alert. But what is most important is that we like to play the victim. We don't take responsibility. It's easy to play a race card, a PhD card. You see me with a whatever, and then I ask you about your job, and then you tell me I'm bullying you. We play sexual harassment, yet what happens, we have women who actually use their sexuality to manipulate supervisors. And unfortunately, these are the things that are happening. So you need to dig deeper, ask questions, listen to dissenting voices before you make decisions. There are other levels in terms of what the organization needs to do to make sure that we create safe spaces for different kinds of employee engagement. Do you get someone from outside? Wellness and HR has proven not to be the go-to. It's not me, it's the women that I interviewed. They say HR in your organization and wellness, they're not a go-to place. Find outside your network. So just keep ahead. And also just in terms, you have to improve your competences. At the end of the day, my friend, competency is important, but also you have to just not be oblivious to the fact that that space as a political space, you think your security or uanto klinayo is at the bottom, that person is more powerful maybe than your supervisor. He probably has the flow of information goes straight to the CEO. So this is what you call the intelligence that you should know, that things are not lined as they are, you'll find in the strategic plan, there's a lot of gray areas within the organization. The culture is along the boardroom, along the walls of the boardroom, and not on the strategic plan. Thank you.
Sure. I'm conscious of time. I feel like those answers
Yes.
gave you a lot, right? And I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Because of the time constraints, I can't take another question, and I cannot deprive Naadiya from also sharing her last words, because I really feel like Dumi got to share her words through the answer to your question. Mvui got to share her words through her answer to your question. And
Yes.
now, Naadiya, please share your last words.
Sure, I'm not going to answer the question, but I'm going to say there's actually four
Last words.
Ps. People, per effort, purpose, and passion. People are most important. And as president of Convocation, I'm just going to take the liberty here and say that as newly elected president of Convocation, I am the voice of all of you, and would love to be able to actually bring you all in, keep you all engaged through the alumni office, but also my DMs are open, people. So if you want to connect, if you want to do more of this, what we can do better, what we can do more interesting, the alumni office is always open. And as it's an absolute privilege. I've got a 2-year term, and honestly, the only piece that I'd like to do over the next 2 years is make sure that we have a really super engaged alumni, and that we make sure that our degrees always have value and meaning in the world. And we only do that by lifting each other up. And so let's do that together.
Beautiful. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Esteemed panelists, amazing, 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 amazing. 2 things from me on the screen we had just a second ago, a Slido link. So if you just go to slido.com or sli.do and use that hashtag, we will capture the questions that you didn't manage to get to, and then we'll attempt to answer them in the next events as our president is going to organize and make sure that we have follow-up events. And then number 2, on your post-it notes, any ideas that you have around, it could be around building the very community that she's answering you with, to say, let's have a community, safe spaces, create a network, talk about these things. And I think the most important question around that you should be asking yourself is your why. Why do you want to be a corporate beast? Why do you want to be in leadership? Why do you want to be rich? Why do you want to get to the top? Why do you want to be a CEO? Why do you want to own a company? What is your why? And those questions unravel, like she has said, through coaching, through mentorship, through finding those safe spaces to have those conversations, really that dig deep into self. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been inspiring, and I'll hand over right back to Libo.